Hello and good evening. This is Andrew from San Diego Audubon Society, a new face. You're all probably expecting Jen Hodge, but I'm filling in for her because she is in the Sawtooth Mountains on a fantastic sounding trip. We'll give it another couple minutes, 6:02, 6:03 or so, and we'll jump in with our webinar for October, Light Pollution and Dark Skies Initiatives. So we'll be right back. All right. Well, good evening. It's October 16th, right? And 14th, October 14th. And you're tuning into the San Diego Audubon Society Friends webinar. Nice to see you all. We have 10 attendees and 2 panelists this evening. Megan and Kathy are our guests for the presentation, and we'll get started. And like I said just a bit ago, my name is Andrew Meyer. I'm the Director of Conservation for the San Diego Audubon Society. So I'm not sure if I've met many of you or any of you, but nice to see you all. Thanks very much for tuning in this evening. Our webinar topic, I'm filling in for Jen Hodge, who normally runs these, and our webinar topic for this evening is Light Pollution and Dark Skies Initiatives. And it's going to be super cool. A whole lot of conservation components and overlaps with from this topic, certainly, but definitely also human health and aesthetic qualities. Kathy and Megan are the experts, and they'll jump into the topic. I'm excited to learn a bunch as well myself. A couple of housekeeping things before we get started. Jen will yell at me if I don't give you guys an update on some of the events that are coming up in the near future. So just as an FYI, you can get more information from our website, sandiegoaudubon.org. There's a calendar there with which this event is on, certainly, and we're filling up calendars. October has been super busy for outdoor activities. It's very, very nice to get back into the swing of things safely. And so October is busy, November is busy, certainly. So check that website for information. Some of the events that are coming up, we have Wander the Wetlands, which is an open house for the Kendall Frost Marsh in the northeast corner of Mission Bay. So if you're a local, if you've been to Mission Bay but never been into the last remnant tidal marsh habitat there, the 2nd and 4th Saturdays of every month, you can, from 9 to 11 a.m., you can get into that space, look at the marsh up close and personal. The end of this month, October 29th and 30th, is the Bird Photography Festival. Our bird walks are back in person, and they're several a week, many a month. And so find out information about where they are scheduled to be and how to meet and how to register for those on the website, on the calendar. And then the Bird Festival is scheduled and registration is just about to open if it hasn't already. That starts February 16th. So that's a couple of months away, but it's a big annual event for us and hopefully for all of you as well. 2 more housekeeping things. This video is being recorded so that folks can watch it if they didn't make it tonight. The chat box is how we can communicate with each other quickly. So down at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you should have one tool called chat. I will try and monitor that as best I can. But if you have questions for Megan and Kathy as they present, use the Q&A tool, please. And that's a real easy one just for distinct questions. I'll pull from that and I'll ask Megan or Kathy a question as we go along. It'll be an easier way for me to kind of organize the information to get them to respond to. So that's the chat versus the Q&A tools down at the bottom. And I think that's it for Maya. You're not here to see me, so we should jump right into the topic, I think. So again, this is Light Pollution and Dark Skies Initiatives for the October webinar. We have Kathy Hansel and Megan Peralta here. Thank you very much. First off, right off the bat, Kathy and Megan. And we're going to start off with Megan. And Megan is the secretary of the Julian Dark Sky Network. So that's an organization dedicated to preserving Julian's majestic night sky. And Megan, when you're ready, turn your video on, unmute yourself, and start presenting, please. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Let's hope this technology works.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah, all right, share sound. Good to go. All right. As Andrew said, I'm Megan Peralta. I've been part of the Julian Dark Sky Network for a few years now, and we're an organization dedicated to preserving the night sky of Julian. And it's really important to me because it's one of the dwindling natural resources and riches of the backcountry, especially. And in the last few years, I've learned a lot about why we need natural darkness. I work for our local newspaper up in Julian and was sent to do a story on an event called Julian Natural Wonderfest in 2018. And that was where I interviewed Doug Solisey, who's the founder of the Julian Dark Sky Network. And I interviewed Lynn Jarman, our vice president. And they were the first people who ever told me about light pollution. I'd never heard of it. And from there, I started learning more and more and started realizing how much we need the night. So since 2016, the JDSN has been working toward obtaining the International Dark Sky Association's designation as an international dark sky community. Wow, what a mouthful. It has taken years of documentation and public outreach to reach this goal. And in May, we became the second international dark sky community in California. Borrego Springs is the first, and we are the 30th in the world. So we're really excited about that. So a bit about comparisons now. I moved to Julian in 2017 from downtown San Diego, Barrio Logan. And the difference in the night sky couldn't be more pronounced. This is a really good representation of what night looks like there. Like nights in the downtown area are sort of an orangish blue, fairly unnatural. And if you are lucky enough to see Jupiter, you might think it's the one star in the sky when really you're missing billions of them. Now compare that to the night sky in Julian. I took this photo in 2020 out in the Cuyamacas. And here, of course, you can see Jupiter, but it's nestled amongst thousands of stars and right against the Milky Way. So it's a very great difference. And here is another comparison photo taken by some of our astronomers in the JDSN. This is a photo, these are photos of the same galaxy in Andromeda. This one on the left was taken from Julian at a dark sky party. And the one on the right was taken from San Marcos. So you can clearly see the difference in the light pollution factor. Okay, so what is light pollution? As defined by the International Dark Sky Association, it is the excessive and inappropriate use of light. And now artificial light at night has been recognized as a contributor to environmental change and a biodiversity threat on a global scale. Let me know if you can't hear.
It's more than 1 billion cars burning 2 billion headlights. It's argon gas and less than an inch of tungsten metal swinging naked from the ceiling. It's beautiful, at a distance, and blinding the rest of the time. It's sealed glass tubes, mercury, phosphor powder, free electrons and ions bumping and vibrating and dully humming. It's 1898 to 1959, the discovery of neon to the Welcome to Las Vegas sign. It's the Las Vegas Strip. It's the Sunset Strip. It's strip clubs and stadiums. It's streetlights and streetcars. It's malls. It's your work. It's outside your bedroom window keeping you from sleeping. It's insomnia. It's the slow extinction of animals and insects dependent on darkness for migration and mating. It's the device you obsessively check as you walk down the street, raising your dopamine levels while reducing your melatonin. It's a carcinogen. It's one of the reasons women in developed nations are 5 times more likely to have breast cancer. It's looking down instead of up. It's 2/3 of the global population, 5 billion people, unable to truly see the night sky. It's the indifferent blinking out of 200 billion stars. To learn more about light pollution, its impact on our environment and health, check out darksky.org.
So there are a couple categories of light pollution. We're all really familiar with glare, the excessive brightness that causes visual discomfort. We especially know it when a bright headlight comes at us in a dark night on a dark road and it blinds us for several seconds, which can be really dangerous. But it's also used in residential lighting, business lighting, and it can be a really big problem. Then we have sky glow, which is something that astronomers are especially sort of worried about, especially up here in Julian. We see some of the sky glow from El Centro or San Diego or even Palm Springs at times. And it's the brightening of the night sky over inhabited areas. Then there's light clutter, especially if you live in downtown areas or built up areas, the excessive grouping of lights causing distraction. And we're all familiar with light trespass, which is light falling where it's not intended or needed. And if you think that throwing trash in a neighbor's yard or painting their house or, I don't know, hosing off their windows without their permission is rude, like light pollution is really similar to that kind of disrespect, I think. And if we were to take active steps to reduce light trespass and make sure all of our light stays on our property, I think that would make great strides toward limiting light pollution. So how does light affect you and your health? Well, for the first thing, like, don't get me wrong, we need light. We have evolved to need bright days and dark nights to keep our circadian rhythms balanced. And even though blue light gets a bad rap, it has its positives. Like, it comes from the sun, and it's those waves and particles that make the sky appear blue. So blue light is also associated with better mental alertness, better mood, and better reaction time. However, there can be too much of a good thing. The research on how blue light affects us is varied, but one thing is really sure is that blue light, especially from devices, can affect children's eyes much more because they don't have the self-protective functions built into the eye. The eye hasn't matured. So I see this as a tutor. A lot of my kids have glasses or CRT contacts, and they're losing their vision before they're even in high school. It's really scary. So one big thing that light prevents is the production of melatonin. There are cells in the back of your eye that has nothing to do with actual vision. They're there purely to tell you whether it is day or night. And so when there is no light, your hypothalamus gets the signal from your eye to start secreting melatonin, which is the hormone that makes you sleepy and helps you go to sleep. However, melatonin has a lot of benefits. It's an antioxidant, an antidepressant, and an anti-aging agent. So if you're interested in aging more slowly and feeling better and avoiding cancer, it's very important to get good sleep. These are a couple of things that sleep disorders can affect. Cortisol is a stress hormone that has corrosive effects if it's experienced in the body in like chronically over time. Insulin regulates weight control especially, and it can be thrown off if you have a sleep disorder. Leptin affects your satiety levels and ghrelin affects your hunger levels. So this is also weight related issues that come from sleep disorders. So if you want to avoid diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, obesity, and chronic fatigue, it's really important to get sleep. As the video said, women in developed countries are 5 times more likely to develop breast cancer. And a lot of that is speculated that it has to do with artificial light at night, especially working the night shift, which has been now considered a carcinogen. So the bottom line is we need sleep, and to sleep we need darkness. But we're not the only ones who need darkness. Plants, animals, the entire environment needs darkness, as we'll see. So this is periphyton. It's the scummy stuff at the bottom of ponds and lakes that covers the rocks and creeks, and nobody really likes it. It's pretty slippery and slimy and gross, but it's really important for the aquatic environment. It oxygenates the water and it feeds a lot of small consumers and invertebrates. When they did a 3-week light pollution experiment and exposed it to light, the periphyton decreased by 50% within 3 weeks, meaning that there was a severe impact on the aquatic ecosystem. Photoperiodism is the mechanism in trees that tells them when to go dormant and when to bloom or blossom. And as you can see from this tree in New York, the light that it's exposed to from this unshielded street light has delayed its dormancy and sort of messed up its rhythm, its own circadian rhythm or its seasonal rhythm. This means that its stomatal pores open wider and it's more vulnerable to air pollution and water stress. So it's not good for the trees. A lot of cactus species need darkness to bloom and to be pollinated. Meadows, in another experiment that were exposed to artificial light, were pollinated 70% less than those that had natural darkness. So that definitely affects plants' reproductive abilities. A lot of people think, okay, the bees are really, really important, and they are, but we often discount moths, which make up like a great significant portion of our pollinators, and they're nocturnal, of course. When you have electric lights on, it distracts them, it pulls them away from pollinating and doing what they need to do. They become easier prey for bats and other predators. They fly around until they're exhausted or they get fried on the lights. And so we have direct impact on not only that species, but all the plants that they pollinate. I know we all love cute sea turtles. Only one species of sea turtle is not endangered now. And a really big reason is light pollution and the effect of building developments near their habitat. Out of thousands of hatchlings that are born on shore or that hatch on shore, only 100 might make it back to the water. And a really big reason is because having evolved over millennia to crawl toward the brightest light on the horizon, which originally was moonlight and starlight on the water, they now crawl toward the artificial lights of motels, hotels, gas stations, and bars across the highway. And so they get run over, they get picked off by predators, they die of dehydration and starvation. And this is a really big problem for this endangered species. They're a really big part of the nutrient cycle of the ocean as well. Anyone who's ever heard frogs and toads croaking at night near a creek knows the magic of that sound. And that's actually part of their mating ritual. And the species, when exposed to artificial light, they stop their croaking ritual, which means they mate less frequently or not at all. And of course, we're all interested in birds, and this is a really tragic effect of artificial light at night, especially. So up to over 1 billion birds, I think, don't quote me on this, are migrating birds. And so during the seasonal changes, they're on the move, but they've evolved to navigate by starlight and moonlight. And so the artificial light at night, especially in cities, distracts them and throws them off course, and they end up flying into the cities. And up to 1 billion birds die in the US or in North America every year because of collisions with buildings or power lines getting run over, all the effects of artificial light at night. And this can also affect their mating and whether they migrate too late or too early. And they often have poor nesting sites because of artificial light at night, which I think Kathy will talk about too. But the biggest question that comes up when we talk about let's turn off the lights is crime. Like, doesn't light at night prevent crime? And actually, there's no statistical evidence that shows that more light equals less crime. In fact, several studies have shown that the more light you have on at night, the higher the crime rate. Why would that be? Criminals and predators, intruders need light to see what they're doing, just like we need light to see what we're doing. So when you have glaring lights open, shows them where they need to go. It shows them the way. It can make it easier to target victims if they can see you clearly under lights. And there were studies in Chicago where they increased lighting of an alley, and actually the vandalism and graffiti increased as well. So more light does not necessarily mean less crime. And here's an example. Here's a glaring unshielded light. And of course, it obliterates your night vision when you go out because your dog is barking and hears something. And here the photographer has shielded that light, and you see the intruder right there that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. So actually, glaring light at night or inappropriate light at night can decrease safety. But there are solutions, and they're not difficult solutions. So that's the good news. There are 5 principles that the IDA gives us for good lighting at night: that it only be on when needed, that it only lights the needed area, that it minimizes brightness, minimizes blue light emissions especially, and is fully shielded, so pointing down. We waste up to $100 billion on wasted light every year because we have light shooting up into the sky or glaring out to the side and not lighting the actual ground where we need to be. Major problem, but easy fix. So this is what night could look like. And when we say dark skies, we don't really mean let's have like blackness all around us. We mean turn off the artificial light so that we can see the natural beauty above us. Only 20% of people in the US now live in a place where they can see the Milky Way. And I think that's really a tragedy. A lot of my students have never seen the Milky Way. And when two of them came up to Julian a few years ago, they were just astonished by the beauty of it. And they'd never seen anything like it living in the city. And I think it's really a legacy that we need to pass on. It's something that has inspired generations of artists and writers, painters. And it's just like one of the greatest wonders of our world. And it's right above us, and we're washing it out with unnecessary artificial light at night. And I think there are easy fixes, but above all, it's just such a majestic experience to look up and see the Milky Way because it's your home. It's just part of you. So I hope that we can take those steps to limit light at night, because there are easy ways to increase safety while decreasing light pollution. So thank you very much, and let's see what Kathy has to say. She has a lot of good information.
That was awesome. Thank you, Megan, very much. Let's see. We can ask some questions from or of Megan if they yeah, and probably Kathy will get into some of this too. So we'll have some questions at the very end as well. But Megan, do you want to respond quickly to Lynn's question about what are the major impacts of artificial light on animals? You touched on several of them already. But anything else that you want to add to that?
Yeah, both predators and prey need darkness and light. Like a lot of prey animals depend on darkness to hide from predators, while predators need darkness to sneak up on prey. So there's predation and there's mating that gets disrupted. Circadian rhythms of animals get disrupted. And the issue is that when you have unnecessary lighting at night, it doesn't necessarily deter what you are hoping it deters. It actually attracts more problems. So I think like I said, a lot of wildlife is affected. We need dark nights to function.
That's awesome. Thank you. And like I said, I think Kathy will cover some of this too. Megan, I had one quick question. So what is the it's awesome to have in San Diego County 2 examples of communities that have gone through and gotten certified. How long did it take the community to do this? And what's the biggest city that has been certified? That might be that's a rough question, but like what have any large cities been certified, or are they mostly communities like Borrego Springs and Julian?
I think Flagstaff was the first international dark
Oh,
sky
right.
community. That was a while ago. I think that was at least 15 years ago, but don't quote me. And then I think Pittsburgh and then Tucson are some examples of bigger cities.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. And it took us, well, Doug founded the JDSN in 2016, and we just got the designation in May. And Lynn Jarman worked on like an over 100-page application. We had to do a dark sky quality meter, which means that we had dark sky readings at different parts of the county, because it's measured on a scale, and Doug would know more about this, but it goes up to like 19 or 20 or 21. And so the higher the number, the darker the sky. And we're about 19 or 20, which is really good. And so we had people throughout the county metering the sky. And so we had to chart that difference over several years. We had to show how we had done public outreach, had to show how we had showed up in the media. It was a very long process, but Lynn and Doug led the way.
Awesome. Okay. Great. Well, thanks. So yeah, Megan talked for about 20 minutes, and we'll give Kathy the same amount of time. And like I said, that'll put us with 10, 15 minutes at the end for questions for both of them. So Lynn, I'll keep your question up here and to remind myself to ask Kathy the same question. But thanks very much, Megan. Megan will stick around until the end as well. But let me turn it over to Kathy. Kathy Hansel is currently Vice President of the San Diego County chapter of the International Dark Sky Association. And she's always loved the experience of nighttime and began researching light pollution after noticing excessively bright streetlights and increasing light trespass at her home from neighbors' lighting. As a breast cancer survivor, Kathy's committed to raising awareness about light pollution and its potential effects on human health. Thank you very much, Kathy, and take it away.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you so much for the privilege of being here tonight.
Yeah.
Okay. The International Dark Sky Association was formed in 1988, and since then it has led the global movement to protect the night from light pollution. Our impact spans more than 51 countries with members, advocates, and dark sky places on every inhabited continent. Our vision, the night sky filled with stars, is celebrated and protected around the world as a shared heritage benefiting all living things. The IDA and the Audubon Society recently formed a strategic partnership. Audubon's mission includes conservation of critical bird habitat, including the sky. This was a natural intersection with IDA's focus on protecting the night from artificial light. This partnership expands efforts to return the night sky to a more natural state, and it fosters collaboration to protect the night sky for both birds and people. Local chapters like ours can do joint projects like this presentation that we're doing tonight. Another example where IDA and Audubon connected on a project was the Lights Out initiative in Colorado. It was simple. First, shield lights to prevent light from being emitted upwards. And second, turn off lights by midnight during the bird migration season. That allows the birds to navigate safely. So light pollution, I've heard about it, but why should I care? There's so many other things to worry about. Well, fixing light pollution is actually relatively simple. Some light pollution can be fixed with the flip of a switch. So light pollution affects us all. It impacts wildlife, the health of our environment, and our own human health. It also wastes a tremendous amount of energy. And it's important for our human and our cultural heritage. There's so much art and literature that revolves around the beauty of the night sky. You know, we see here Vincent van Gogh's painting Starry Nights, and you see this everywhere. And, you know, would he be inspired to paint this image today? You know, if he lived in the city of San Diego, likely not. So it's a lot to consider. Safety. Light pollution also affects our safety. These glaring bright lights at night are actually can cause us to have problems seeing at night. The ever-increasing brightness of glare from nighttime light not only causes visual discomfort, it impacts our ability to navigate safely as both drivers and pedestrians. Addressing the light pollution problem in San Diego County will enable wildlife and the environment to thrive naturally. It'll protect us from harmful exposure to artificial light at night. It'll reduce energy waste, save us money, and help to protect our planet. It will allow us to enjoy the beauty and magnificence of the night sky and our own Milky Way galaxy. It will eliminate blight and unsightly glare in our communities, and it will bring neighbors closer together instead of closing them off for one another. When blinds are closed to keep out street lights and neighbors trespassing lights, nobody's watching. That means there's no neighborhood watch. This is one unintentional way that bright light actually aids criminals instead of deterring them. This postcard from the IDA is one of our public outreach materials, and it overviews the enormous cost of residential lighting in the US. About 13% of residential electricity use is for outdoor lighting. And about a third of that, 35%, is wasted by unshielded lighting or light that is poorly aimed, going up into the sky or into neighboring homes where it's not even wanted. About 15 million tons of CO2 are emitted each year in order to power residential outdoor lighting in the US. It would take about 600 million trees to be planted in order to offset that amount of emissions. This is a wonderful poster put together by the Tracy Aviary out in Salt Lake City, explaining why light pollution is a problem for birds. Much like insects to a light bulb, light from towns, suburbs, and cities that spill into the skies attracts birds and draws them in. Birds then exhaust themselves navigating these unfamiliar spaces. In this confused state, they strike lit and reflective windows. It's estimated that between 365 million and 1 billion birds die in these strikes or collisions each year in North America alone. So how does light pollution impact migrating songbirds? Well, San Diego is in the Pacific Flyway. Our city lights may be significantly harmful to birds on their migratory path to Baja California, or even as far south as Central or South America for some species. Migratory birds depend on cues from properly timed seasonal cycles. Artificial lights can cause them to migrate too early or too late, missing important ideal climate conditions for nesting, foraging, and other behaviors. Most songbirds migrate at night, navigating by the moonlight and starlight, and they might wander off course towards bright city lights. This could cause them to land in urban areas without access to critical resources. Artificial light and sky glow around buildings attracts birds, resulting in fatal nighttime collisions with windows and walls. Songbirds that vocalize or call during nighttime flight are far more likely to strike buildings than those that are silent. Birds vocalize more frequently when they become disoriented by light at night, attracting additional members of their flocks, leading to even more collisions. One unfortunate example was intended to be a good thing, the World Trade Center annual 9/11 tribute in light. Beams of light shine upward into the sky to commemorate victims of the September 11th terror attacks. Unfortunately, these lights are visible 60 miles away, 4 miles up into the sky. Fledgling seabirds, migrating songbirds, and other species are pulled into the light and they become trapped, flying in circles until they become exhausted. Well, okay, so how many birds can possibly go into these light beams? Well, back on September 11th in 2015, if we look on the left side, when the light beams were turned off, there was about 500 birds in this vicinity. Around 20 minutes later, after the lights had been turned on, that number jumped to 15,700 birds at risk for being injured or dying from these lights. This is a case where the New York City Audubon Society stepped in. From 8 p.m. until 6 p.m. on September 11th, experienced counters scan and photograph the light beams every 20 minutes, counting the birds. When the number exceeds 1,000, the lights are turned off for approximately 20 minutes, allowing the birds to disperse and escape. Another unfortunate incident happened in Galveston, Texas. In May of 2017, there was a fatal light collision involving 25 different species of songbirds, and it resulted in 395 bird deaths, which included warblers, grosbeaks, and others. The birds flew into the dazzling floodlights at the American National Insurance Building on the skyline of Galveston, Texas. When birds see light on reflected images, they see what's, birds, I'm sorry, let me restate that. Birds see the reflected images on glass, not a hard surface like we do. Lit interiors may look like a resting place, especially if there's plants in the office. The skyscraper was illuminated by 20 beams of light every night, but now it's gone dark. This was a success story, actually, from Galveston County Audubon, Audubon Texas, and Houston Audubon, who worked together with the owners of the building to have the lights turned down. One interesting thing from Richard Gibbons, who was the conservation manager for Houston Audubon, he stated that the Texas coast is the first land these migrating birds encounter after crossing the Gulf of Mexico. So right away, they're looking for some habitat. And unfortunately, they saw this building, but there are success stories. Now we'll look at the impacts of light pollution on seabirds. So seabirds have significant ecological importance. They help drive ecotourism that supports numerous local economies. Burrow nesting seabirds are attracted to and disoriented by artificial light. Light-induced landings can be fatal due to collisions with buildings, electric wires, pylons, fences, posts, or the ground. Grounded birds may be unable to take off again, becoming vulnerable to predation, vehicle collisions, starvation, dehydration, or even poaching. 24 of the seabird species most likely to ground are listed as globally threatened, many of them being petrels and shearwaters. Fledglings, or juveniles, flying from the nest for the first time, make up 68 to 99% of all grounding seabirds. Scientists hypothesize that artificial lights drown out the natural light of the moon and the stars. Here's an interesting story of how bad outdoor lighting impacts nesting birds. So this is an image of the Middle Fork River Forest Preserve out in Illinois. I was fortunate to visit this dark sky park the last time I visited family in Chicago. I also saw one of the park rangers speak at one of the annual IDA conferences. He was talking about how he was approached by some local astronomers after this area was identified as a very dark place in kind of northern central Illinois. And he was grumbling about having to replace the lights. Oh, what does this mean? You know, we have to get different lights. However, after the unshielded lights were replaced, the park rangers noticed that birds returned to nesting in the trees near the lights. They had been displaced by light pollution. The bright lights had them go elsewhere, but they came back once the lights were shielded. If you like birds, and if you're here, you probably do, consider the lighting in your own backyard. Stay at or below 3000 K CCT, which stands for correlated color temperature. 2700 K or even 2200 K is better. Shield with your lights and aim them downward, not up or outward at trees. It's just light, right? Well, it may seem harmless. It's just light, but light pollution has far-reaching consequences that are harmful to all living things. When I look at this image of the United States, well, actually it's North America, first I think, oh, it's so pretty. Look at the lights. Isn't that beautiful? But then when I think about what this really is, this is our street lights, porch lights, parking lot lights, car headlights, office buildings that are left on all night long, commercial signs and billboards glaring into the night sky. It's actually kind of sad. If you think about too, in a plane, when you're flying at night, you're up 30,000, 35,000 feet, and you see all that light that far away. Is it really necessary that we have that much light? Responsible outdoor lighting reduces light pollution. It leads to a better quality of life for all living things, and it starts with a good lighting ordinance. In San Diego County, there's a light pollution chapter in the municipal code. Its purpose is to minimize light pollution. It allows county citizens to view and enjoy the night environment. It allows unincorporated communities like Julian to be recognized by the International Dark Sky Association as dark sky communities. And it also protects astronomical research that occurs at Palomar and Mount Laguna observatories. It protects them from the detrimental effects of light pollution. And Megan showed us a good example of how that can be impacted. In the lower right here, we have an image of a facility where there were some unshielded wall packs, just shining glaring light everywhere up into the sky all over the place. And then simply shielding those fixtures and pointing them down, you see how the light is directed just where it's needed. It's intended to be lighting the front of the doors, and now it is. This image shows the San Diego County lighting zones. There's actually 3 different zones in the lighting code, zone A, B, and C, each with different requirements for lighting, strict and less strict. So by Palomar and Mount Laguna is zone A. It gives them a 50-mile radius where there's more strict lighting conditions. That's been in place for a long time. Then we have zone C, and you'll notice Julian and Borrego Springs, our dark sky communities, now fall under that zone C. And thank you to Julian and the Dark Sky Network for getting this lighting code updated. That was quite an effort. And thank you to the county, our county officials for agreeing to that and putting it in place. I've also included here Audubon Silverwood Wildlife Sanctuary near Lakeside. That's in an unincorporated area. That falls under zone B. And then the Anstine Audubon Nature Preserve near Vista. If you hadn't had an opportunity to visit these places yet, I highly recommend you look at the Audubon site, the San Diego Audubon site, and check the hours and plan a trip to go. They're just beautiful places. Now, if you don't live in an unincorporated area or the city of San Diego, you'll have a different ordinance. Here's a quick glimpse at the San Diego County lighting ordinance, Zone C, which is our dark sky ordinance. You'll notice over here that lighting should be extinguished 2 hours after sunset or within 30 minutes after the close of business, whichever is later. Now there's a lot more to this. There's a lot more, but this is just high level here. you'll see that there's requirements for shielding, the amount of light that you can have on your property, and the color temperature. Important to note for Zone C, all the different classes of lighting needs to be 3000 K or less. That's the more amber color. Our City of San Diego lighting ordinance is actually really good too. I believe the IDA was involved with this many, many years ago. Some of the key points are that light must not trespass onto surrounding properties, meaning keep your lights to yourself. Your light should stay on your own premises and not cross the fence line onto another property. Unfortunately, often that happens. Our outdoor lighting should not exceed 4000 K color temperature, and most lighting should be turned off between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. I have a feeling not a lot of people know that. You can find your own lighting ordinance on the San Diego County IDA chapter website at sd-darksky.org under the resources tab. We all have a right to experience night. Here's how you can help. Talk to neighbors, friends, and family about light pollution and about good lighting. Learn about natural darkness at night. The End of Night is a great book. Visit the IDA and the Julian Dark Sky Network websites. There's a lot of good materials out there. If you can, join these organizations. Your membership dues supports our work. Become a citizen scientist or talk to your children or high school children in the area about how they can do science projects. These are on the IDA website. You can attend a star party with the San Diego Astronomy Association. They're starting to have in-person events now, as is the Julian Dark Sky Network. And they just had a star party up in Julian just recently. It was a great, great event. I also urge you to visit a dark sky place. We've got Borrego Springs, Julian, and our Anza Borrego Desert State Park. I'll show you that in a minute. Also of note, a lot of our national parks are becoming certified as IDA dark sky parks. A good slogan that they have, I love it. Half the park is after dark. So in case you weren't aware, San Diego County is home to 3 dark sky places. This is a big deal. First was Borrego Springs. It was the world's 2nd international dark sky community back in 2009. Then we have Anza Borrego Desert State Park, which happens to be the 2nd largest state park in the country. This is a dark sky park. And now we have Julian. Julian was designated as a dark sky community in May 2021, the 2nd in California and only the 30th in the entire world. So we asked the question, what's next? Could it be Valley Center? I know some folks up there are talking about protecting their dark skies. Or out in Potrero, there's some other interest there. People are really starting to understand the importance of being able to see the Milky Way and just to have a tranquil atmosphere at night. I also listed the city of San Diego. Hey, why not? Let's shoot for the stars, right? You know, Megan mentioned the city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This is a major metropolitan area. They recently passed a dark sky ordinance. Now, I don't know if they're planning on becoming a dark sky city. I know there's dark sky urban places, which are a little different from dark sky communities. They may be on their way, and who knows what will follow. So what are some other dark sky initiatives in San Diego? Well, the Julian Dark Sky Network celebrated becoming an international dark sky community with a fantastic float in their 4th of July parade, and they even won an award. We also partner the IDA with the San Diego Astronomy Association and the Julian Dark Sky Network at local star parties. And we set up booths where we pass out information pamphlets on light pollution. We answer people's questions. So we're going to be doing more of that. Now, we've all heard about not looking at your phone at night because of harmful blue light. And I'm going to go real quick here, but it does affect memory, makes it harder to learn, can lead to depression if you have decreased melatonin levels. There's an obesity risk and also cancers that are estrogen related, such as breast and prostate cancers. You need to have melatonin at night in order to fight off these things. There's research being done to see if this kind of light impacts cataracts, and the American Medical Association, the AMA, in 2016 released a caution about streetlights, and they also mentioned potential retinal damage over time. Now, who's talking about streetlights? Those are the same blue light that's in your phone, but nobody's talking about don't look at the street light. However, more than 25 cities have moved away from 4,000 K streetlights since the AMA issued that warning. Here in the city of San Diego, unfortunately, we still have 4,000 K streetlights. That's another initiative that we're starting to look at. When our eyes detect blue light, our brain says it's daytime, and that's not a good thing when it's really night. I urge you to support the replacement of 4,000 K streetlights with 2,700 K streetlights. Also, demand enforcement of your local lighting ordinances. We shouldn't be subjected to glare and all of this light at night, like this ATM running simple errands at night. We shouldn't have to see this. Something that you can do that's really neat and new is you can certify your home as being dark sky friendly, and you can print a certificate to display in your picture window at home. Megan already covered this, so I'll go real quick, but it talks about you just have to meet the 5 principles for responsible outdoor lighting. Making sure the light is useful, that it's targeted, that the light levels are low. You don't need a 100-watt bulb for a porch light. 25 watts is even maybe a bit too much. I know mine seems really bright now that it's an LED equivalent 25 watt. Make sure the lighting is controlled. If you can, have motion sensors so that it's not on all night, and be aware of color temperature. Daylight night is not for use at nighttime. You can find out what the color temperature of a light is on the actual package. It's included now. You'll see it like this. Warm and is amber. It's more amber color, and the cool is the daylight, which looks really bright white or blue sometimes even. Protecting the night sky starts with you. Let's think about, at the end of this presentation, I'll wrap up by just tossing this out there. As a follow-on, let's consider a collaborative effort between San Diego County IDA and our San Diego Audubon chapter of maybe having a lights out event here, or a lights out initiative somewhere in San Diego County. Wouldn't the birds just love that? Thank you so much for your time tonight and your attention. May you enjoy a tranquil, star-filled night.
Bravo. Thank you, Kathy, very, very much. That was awesome. Yeah, and the connection between it being relatively easy to solve in lots of ways, and the impacts, all the impacts that you and Megan brought up, is quite compelling, I'd say. So we have a couple of questions, and I certainly have a few, but I'll bring up some of the ones that we've gotten. So Lynn was asked about the impacts of artificial lights on animals. So I think we covered that, and thank you both for focusing on birds. I'm sure that everybody in the webinar is a bird lover, as well as all wildlife, but definitely birds. So that's really good. And I didn't know a lot of that connection between birds and the light. Certainly in San Diego County, we have done a little bit of research looking at collisions with buildings, especially downtown San Diego. And then also we talk about being on the Pacific Flyway all the time. We are blessed and have a responsibility to take care of our position along the coast, certainly, and along the mountains that form the spine of the center of the county. So we get a lot of that. And so the connection that you've made is good, really, really cool. So Debbie had a question about aeroecology. So she says, I have recently read some about the fairly new study of aeroecology, the airspace as habitat. Clearly, night is an important part of that. Do you have any comments on aeroecology, or do you know anybody locally who's started to talk about and factor that into their planning? Kathy or Megan, have you guys dabbled in aeroecology at all?
I have not heard of that term yet. I do know that there are concerns about the number of satellites being launched. And I believe that what I read was related to like astrophotography and also maybe astronomical research, as these lights from these satellites are flying through images. Megan, do you know anything about this?
I know what you're talking about with the satellites, but I can't add on to that topic.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Debbie. That sounds interesting. I feel like I've heard a little bit about aerial ecology, and certainly it wouldn't just be birds, it would be bats, moths, insects, a lot of the things that you both brought up as well. And would touch on a lot of these things, but I don't know much about it either. Debbie's other question, I learned about dark skies and light pollution 24 years ago when I lived on the East Coast and read that the city of San Diego was a leader in this. What a disappointment when I moved here. City of San Diego regulations are extremely weak. I have tried through our local planning group to have developers in the city to understand light pollution without much luck. I'd be interested if others are working on this. So, Kathy, you did an awesome job of not only putting out some ideas of where we could go, but also some resources for where we are right now. But is there anything else that you want to add? And you also, Kathy, threw down the gauntlet that we should be collaborating on some Lights Out San Diego projects, and be fitting this into code and increasing our code and talking to our neighbors about it. Anything else that either of you would add about some of the options or locations that might be primed and ready to up their game on light pollution?
Well, like Deborah, I'm extremely disappointed with what's happening here in San Diego. I believe when our lighting ordinance was passed before that IDA members were involved with that because it is very dark sky friendly, except the 4000K, but that was so long ago. We didn't know at that time how bad that was. But our code enforcement in San Diego City has not been enforcing the light pollution ordinance for about 5 years now. I have had repeated failures, unfortunately, in trying to deal with them. I am working right now. I attended the environmental subcommittee meeting of the San Diego City Council just last week and made a pitch about the 4000K streetlights. The other thing I'm pitching through my city council representative's office is the lack of code enforcement. And they were supposed to be creating an information bulletin when I worked with Georgette Gomez's office. They were, the developmental services had agreed supposedly to do a light pollution public information bulletin. Unfortunately, years later now, that never got done. So I'm following up with the city council office and they're checking on that. So I'm definitely trying to make headway, but by myself, I'm not going to get a lot done. So I think, Deborah, if you want to give me your information in the chat, if we could connect, I do have kind of like an action plan, but I need a bigger team to help me. So yeah, it is very disappointing. But you know, hey, things can happen. Things can happen if we're just persistent.
Yeah, and Julian showed it, right? Yeah. So I had a question that's kind of related to that. Your map showed Anstine and Silverwood. So for the IDA, what are the kind of geographic areas that can be certified? Does it have to be a community, or could something like Silverwood go through the planning process in order to be a dark sky area or community or whatnot?
Yeah, so there are different things. There is a dark sky park, a dark sky community. I believe there are urban dark sky. There's a whole range. Do you know any more, Megan, about the specific ones? I don't know if a small area like that could be designated, but it would be worth inquiring.
Yeah, I'll inquire. I'll look into it, because a place like Silverwood obviously benefits from not only itself, but also its neighbors and surrounding community being having this on their radar and being dark sky aware. So that's cool. And that would be an awesome community science project to get folks to kind of show that it was following the rules that were necessary or dark enough. So we'll look into it. And the kind of opportunity to partner with the neighbors and the surrounding communities, if it was a larger space than just Silverwood, that also is a good challenge to try and do it as a community rather than as just one parcel owner. I had one other question. So a bunch of your photo stats and kind of images were compelling about how much electricity we're wasting basically by putting our light up into the sky instead of down where we want it. but at the same time, putting a shelter on the light doesn't actually decrease the amount of electricity used. It just decreases the light pollution. So are there communities, I imagine you'd have to go through a whole process of actually changing the light bulb to actually reflect how much light you need, rather than only directing it, in order to have some of those emissions reductions and those kind of things. But can you speak a little bit more about the connection between matching the amount of light you need to the space that you're trying to illuminate, so that you don't waste all that energy going up or deflect it down?
Right. So part of that is, and I'll give you, those statistics were developed from a US Department of Energy data back in 2011. So there's a lot more outdoor light happening, you know, so the extent of the energy waste could be, you know, significantly more. But now with the LED, so you may be using less energy, but it's talking more about waste. So for example, if you have, so like a porch light, if you have just a naked light bulb on your porch, which a lot of my neighbors do, or just clear glass, so then they have 100-watt light, because, or like across the street, they have 100-watt lights. So with that, a lot of the light is shining outward and up into the sky. I have neighbors down below me. I'm on a hillside. Their light shines in my bedroom window like this. And the thought is that if you have a shielded light and you're directing the light down, then you don't need 100 watts, because that light is more concentrated and centered. So you can use, for example, like maybe a 25-watt equivalent, which maybe now is 9 watts. I don't know offhand. So definitely the wattage has come down with the use of LEDs. But part of the problem is because lighting, well, the bulbs can be expensive, but because the electricity use is less, people want more lights. I have a neighbor who just installed 9 light fixtures out front on the sidewalk, on the top of a fence, and that's not allowed, but people do it anyway. It's just an enormous amount of light. And yeah, it's now I can't see in my backyard at night. If I take the trash cans out at dark, it's dangerous because I'm blinded by glare. So does that help? It's more just talking about waste, you know, not necessarily the use of electricity, but it's like running your dryer at night. You know, why would you run your dryer empty all night long? You wouldn't do that. But
Right.
yet
Yeah,
people leave
totally.
lights on outside, they're inside sleeping, and they have all these lights on outside in theory to stay safe. But I have multiple personal examples of how light at night did not stop crime. I think some of it attracted crime.
So Kathy, Debbie put her contact information in the chat box, and I can make sure that you get it offline too if you can't grab it there. But it's 7 p.m. and we're out of questions in the Q&A at least. Anything else that's pressing that Megan, you or Kathy would like to share? And I'll tell you that I work a lot with our conservation committee, which is a whole group of volunteers that meets monthly to talk about all kinds of things related to birds and other wildlife conservation and advocacy. And I'll definitely reach out to both of you for a presentation to them and bring this up at our October meeting. You might find some interested partners there for sure in several of the kind of avenues that you guys brought up. So that's cool. It's inspiring for sure. And I'll share it there. Anything else, Kathy and Megan, that you guys want to add?
Yes, thank you. Thank you
Doug
for having us.
answered your question in the chat. There's a dark sky preserve.
Yeah, right. I found that. That's great. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you again. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Adam. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you both, Megan. Thanks, Kathy. And nice to see you all. Have a great November. So this is our last Friends webinar for now that's been scheduled. That's currently scheduled. We've got a lot more events in person, like I mentioned at the beginning. And from Jen, who usually runs these, and from me and from all San Diego Audubon Society, thank you very, very much. And see you soon. See you in person, hopefully, to go look at some birds and some dark skies. Have a good night.